So a little bit of chat here. You're naming. What this name does is it's what becomes the name of your gummy ship if you win. That's what this actually does. So Highwind, if you're wondering where that's from.
I'm captain. And if you win...
I get to share the Palpu with Kyrie.
Huh?
Deal? The winner gets to share a Palpu with Kyrie.
Oh, wait a minute.
Okay, on my count.
Yeah. Alright. Yeah, Riku would have called it Highwind. If you're wondering where Highwind comes from, that comes from Cid's last name on Final Fantasy VII. It's also what he calls his airship. That's where the name Highwind comes from. Excalibur, obviously, is the sword from the Sword in the Stone. That his name was it King Arthur that pulled out Merlin in the Sword in the Stone Disney film. Old Disney film. Merlin, the wizard guy, that's in your friend group on this as well. Ah. So this race isn't difficult to win. The score is now 99-0, and you see I got a pretty stone. You know what that means, right? I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do the race 99 times. So, what to talk about while doing these races? I can recite the entire game story of Final Fantasy VIII off the top of my head. So, you wake up with a little cutscene. You start the game with a little cutscene, I should say. There's a beach. The intro music of Lithos V something, I don't know what it says, it's French, I think. But then it says, I'll be here waiting. And then there's for what? There's like some little dialogue there. And then after the opening scene with the beach, then there's a few like game character scenes, and then you've got Squall, who's Leon on this, along with Cypher. And they have a little fight scene. And then after that, that's how Squall gets his scar, or Leon gets that scar on his forehead. It was from Cypher. And what happens after that? So then you start the game, you wake up in the dormitory, and you are laying on the bed. The doctor comes in and asks how you're feeling. She says, Quistis is your instructor, let's go get her. She walks off, and then this mysterious girl walks in, blue top, white dress, and says Squall, so we meet again, and then just casually walks off. Quistis walks in, and she's a little bit peeved. She says, I knew it'd be either you or Cypher. Come, let's go, today's the field exam. You walk down with Quistis in the hallway. I won't go into the dialogue, otherwise I'll be sitting here forever. But then, well, okay, you walk down the hallway, end up in the classroom. You need to do the prerequisite to the field exam. A little bit of backstory. Final Fantasy VIII, you're a mercenary who's studying in this school to be like enlisted as a seed. The school is referred to as the Garden. That's pretty much all you need to know. So you go out of the school, you go to the Fire Cavern, and actually after you leave the classroom, a girl's running down the hallway screaming she's late, and she runs into you. That girl is Selphie. Final Fantasy VIII, she's on this, she's the one in the yellow dress, obviously. And you can show around the school. You can also go to the cafeteria and talk to Cypher again, but then you head for the front gate, you meet up with Quistis. You You go to the fire cavern. You can go to the little town that's in the continent of Balam. That's where you start off at. You're in Balam Garden. There is a little town outside the school, but you go on through down to the fire cavern. You get the GF, or it's what you'd call a summon, or if you're playing Final Fantasy X, an Aeon. You get the Ifrit. You then head back into the school. You change into your school uniform. You go down to the lobby. You have some chit chat with the headmaster, whose name is Sid. As you know, there are usually a character named Sid on all the Final Fantasy games, most of them anyway. And then it's time for your field exam, so your combat, kind of like your combat exam, to see if you're ready to be, you know, one of the elite members of this garden, this mercenary force. So you meet up with your squad members. One of them is Cypher, surprise, surprise, and the other one is Zell. He becomes one of your party members. He's quite loud, he's quite boisterous, but he's a good dude. Squall is, or Leon, he is the most depressing guy like you have ever played with, like as your protagonist, man. He is just depressed as hell. Anyway, so you go onto your field exam, you go by car out of the school, you go into the town of Balam, you then board a boat and you go across the sea and you go over to the continent of Galbadia. And what's happening is the Galbadian soldiers have they've sort of taken hostage of this town. Your mission is to land at the beach, you go into the town, and you basically have to liberate it. The Galbadians are in this town called Dollet, and you have to go all the way to the Dollet Communication Tower, and well, that's where the Galbadians are. You make your way through the town, you fight some of their soldiers, you end up at this like little town plaza, and that's where you're stationed to be at. You see some of the soldiers run off down this little walkway into the direction of the communication tower, and Cypher, as your squad leader, decides, let's leave our post and let's follow the enemy to get more combat experience in battle. Basically, he's just looking for a fight. So you and Zell both reluctantly follow him, and when you get to the little cliff area, Cypher leaves the party. He goes off into the communication tower. It's like a big radio tower. And then you have Selphie come up saying, oh, there you are. And they say, hey, you're the dude who showed me around. Oh, ain't that nice. Then Selphie joins your party, so you've got Squall, Zell, and Selphie. You then go into the communication tower. You go up to the top. You have a boss battle against Wedge and Biggs. As you know, most Final Fantasy games have a Wedge and Biggs character in them. Then they get blown away by a big scary wing monster. It blows a big tornado out its mouth. After you beat him, Cypher says you got 30 minutes to get down to the shore, better run. And then you go out of the communication tower, and as soon as you get out of there, you see a little scene with Biggs. He's a Galbadian soldier, bad guy. He presses some buttons on this little device that Cypher knocked out of his hand, and he says go and destroy them, and you hear 2 thuds, and then as soon as you leave, there's this big robot crab thing that jumps down and then chases you through the city. It's quite strong, but with the way Final Fantasy VIII's power-up system works, it is the most broken system like imaginable. You can get your characters doing well in excess of 5,000 damage right at the start of the game if you know how to play the Triple Triad card game. Anyway, so you can destroy the robot crab. There's a certain way you got to do it. People who have played Final Fantasy VIII and know about it will know what I'm talking about. If you've never played Final Fantasy VIII, definitely recommend it. It is a good game. Anyway, I always destroy the crab, but if you let the crab chase you all the way back to the beach, Quistis will shoot it with a big machine gun on the boat. And then you have completed your field test. The way you get scored on it, there's categories which each depend on something you've done. To get a perfect score, it is possible. On the PS1 version, because the game's frame rate runs slower, it's pretty much impossible to do on the PS1, but on the PS4 it's quite easy to get a perfect score. When you battle the Ifrit, you've got to end the battle with 7 seconds or less, but you actually have to knock out his HP with about 30 seconds left so all the dialogue can finish. That dialogue, the timer's still going on. But that needs to finish in under 7 seconds, but not go into the 0 seconds. That'll get you 100 points on your judgment. On your attack, you need to defeat 75 or more enemies, which will leave you extremely over-leveled. And the thing is, on Final Fantasy VIII, the lower level you are, the easier the game is, believe it or not. Then there is Conduct, which is you've got 30 minutes to get to the shore. You need to get there with 25 or more minutes to get max score on that. There is also Spirit, which is how many times you run away from battle. There is only one time where you need to run away from a battle throughout the whole game, and that's the first encounter with the robot crab. And the last one is... a lot of people didn't know this at first, but like when you're running down the little cliff hill, the robot will chase you and he'll rock it, and then Squall and the party will sort of get stunned and they won't be able to move and he'll catch you. If you walk down it instead of run, you bypass the whole thing. And the last one was Attitude, which there's a bunch of different factors for that. Basically, to get max score on that, talk to no one and follow every command without question. That is how you get 100 points on that. And you can get a max level of Seed rank 10, so you're numbered from 1 to 30, and if you're better than 30, you get a rank of A. Your Seed rank, when you take a certain amount of steps in the game, you get paid gil or money. The max you can get at Seed rank A, like the best rank, is 30,000 gil, which is, to be honest, gil in Final Fantasy VIII is basically, it's almost worthless. It's not really much you can really buy in the game, if that makes sense. See, now Final Fantasy XII, for example, that game thrives on you having gil. So anyway, so you've passed the Seed test, you head back to the dock in Balamb from Dollet. Cypher steals a car because he's a jackass. So you, Zell and Selphie have to walk all the way back. You can go visit Zell's mum in the town. Technically his foster mum, but you don't know that at the time. Let's see, so you walk back to the school, you go through the entrance. There's a lot of chit chat throughout the whole game, and it's all text based, there's no voiceovers or anything in it. You get back, you go up to the second floor, you get your test result, you go into the headmaster's office, you get your score, and then there's this inauguration party that you have to attend. You go and get changed. Selphie says you're looking good, let's hit that party. It starts off Squall's being antisocial as ever, hanging against the wall, drinking his stupid glass of champagne. And Zell comes up, he's like, yo, we're both members of Seed. Squall doesn't even shake his hand. Selphie asks if he wants to join the garden festival. It doesn't really mean anything to the game. You can say whatever you want. Then there's a cutscene. Squall's looking up, he sees a shooting star, and then he sort of glances down. There's another girl standing there looking at the same shooting star, then looks at Squall, then she puts a finger up and then walks over to him and says, you're the best looking guy here, dance with me. Squall's like, I can't dance. And then this mystery woman that you haven't met before, it's not the same mystery woman that you saw at the very start of the game, different person. So mystery woman number 2 will literally grab Squall by the arm and just drag him by force onto the dance floor. It's quite funny. And then they have a little dance together. Then after the dance, you're out on the balcony. Quistis comes out and says how amazing of a student you are, even the dance is perfect. And Squall's just like, bro, what do you want? Quistis is like, oh, so you dance with someone you don't even know, but you can't stand being around me? Like, Squall's really cold, by the way. He's like a really antisocial person. Makes antisocial people look like extroverts. So anyway, you and Quistis go to the training center. Quistis tries to tell her some emotions. Quistis is an instructor, but she loses her instructorship and just becomes a regular old member of the Seed mercenary force. And Squall's just like, oh really? Well, if that's how it was decided, you know, abide by it. And then as Quistis is talking, Squall turns his back on her. And I'm not kidding, like he is just an ass. And then he's like, I don't want to carry anyone else's burden, I don't want to listen to anyone's problems, he just walks off. And then as you're exiting the training center, you hear this, well, it's all text-based, you see it on the screen, but someone's calling, they need help. And as you go, you see a big flying wasp-looking monster attacking the girl that you saw at the start of the game, the mystery girl. So you beat the monster, you save her, then two people dressed in white jump down and say it's not safe, let's go. And then Quist is like, who was that? And because the girl says Squall and Quisty, so she's met them before, she knows who they are, but they don't know who she is. Who is Mystery Woman? What happens then? So after that you go back to your bedroom. You sleep it off because it's past midnight. I fell off the tree. Then you head... Okay, then you go to sleep. You wake up the next morning. You hear a knock at your door. It's Zell and Selphie. They're Squall. We've got our first mission. Meet by the gate. So you get up, you go to the gate, and basically you've Headmaster Sid's out there. He gives you your first Seed mission. Your mission is to go to the continent of Galbadia, and you need to go to a city called Timber. And you need to help the Resistance faction. The Resistance faction is against the President of Galbadia. They're pretty much the bad guys. And your little Resistance faction is sort of like... how do you call it? It's sort of like, you know, in Star Wars, after the Jedi have been overthrown by Darth Sidious, you know how you always, like in the later Star Wars movies, you got that little rebel alliance against like the big empire? That's kind of what this faction is in Timber compared to the Galbadian armor. The Galbadian army. But anyway, you head over to the town of Balam. You get on the train and it takes off. It's an underwater train system that connects all the continents. Well, just Galbadia actually. And halfway during the journey, all three of your party members, Squall, Zell and Selphie, they all mysteriously fall asleep while they are in the train carriage. And what happens is you go to this little dream sequence and you have three characters that you're now controlling. They are named Laguna, Kiros and Ward. So anyway, they are Galbadian soldiers and you're like, well, this is a dream of some sort, but they don't appear to be bad or anything. Kind of like how the Galbadian soldiers have been portrayed so far. So anyway, Laguna, Kiros and Ward are like on patrol, but they're in the wrong spot. They're lost in the jungle somewhere. So anyway, you run back to their car and they're like, bugger it, let's go to Delling City. Over in Delling City, Laguna parks his car literally in the middle of the street and just says, oh man, it's cool. Let's go to the hotel. And the other two guys are like, he wants to watch the piano lady. So Laguna's got this crush on this piano player. How many stones do I have? 18. So you head over to the hotel, you go downstairs and Kiros and Ward to Laguna are like, hey, Julia's going to be making her appearance, hey? That's the name of the piano player. Anyway, she starts playing, you walk over to her, and then Laguna gets a cramp in his leg. He's kind of a comedic relief kind of character in these like dream sequences. So anyway, what happens then is Julia plays piano, Laguna gets a cramp in his leg, he hobbles back over to his table, he gets a cramp in his leg whenever he's like nervous or under pressure. Then as he's sitting at the table, the guys are like, hey, like, good stuff, man. Like, you went over and you, like, watched her play piano for whatever. And then both of Laguna and Kiros suddenly get up and take off, and Laguna's like, hey, what the, where he's going, man? And then Julia, the piano player, comes down and sits with him. Laguna's a nervous wreck. It's quite funny. And then she's like, do you want to talk more privately? Everyone's listening in like her personal private bedroom in this hotel. So, ooh, what's going on there? So anyway, you go to the counter, you end up in Julia's room. It's all just chit chat, really. The scene of it depends on a little something you do earlier in the game. You'll get a scene where Laguna just keeps talking too much, or the other scene they'll both have wine, and then Laguna will literally pass out and he'll fall asleep on her. Quite funny, but then Laguna will eventually ask Julia, like, what's her dreams for the future. She's like, she wants to sing, not just play the piano. And she can't, because she's no good at writing song lyrics. But Laguna's like, you know, that must be tough. But Julia says, because of Laguna, I believe I have come up with some song lyrics. And so, like, she was going to write a song sort of about those two, and they're just about to start getting it on in the hotel room, and then they get a knock at the door. It's Kiros and Ward. They're like, Laguna, we got new army jobs, we got new orders, meet by the president's residence. So Julia's like, can we meet again? Laguna's like, yeah man, I have to come here to sing. And that's sort of where it ends. Your party are all awake again and they're like, what the hell just happened? And they all sort of find out that they have the same dream. They all witnessed like the same event while they were all asleep, and they were like, whoa, this is like uber creepy. Uber strange. So anyway, they're like, oh, let's just forget about it for now. Let's head to Timber. The train stops, you get off the train. You're told to tell the guy, but the owls are still around. That's kind of like the password. If you get it wrong, hilariously, Watts, the name of the guy that you're meeting at the train station, will get hit by the train in classic PS1 fashion. The train comes in, it just stops, it doesn't actually hit him, then there's a little distortion on the screen, and then Watts is just on the floor. But anyway, you go into the train, some chit chat, you meet Zone and Watts, who are two of the Resistance faction members. They then say, can you get the princess down from the last room, because they're too scared to wake her up, because she'll beat them up. So anyway, you go down there, and surprise, surprise, it is the same girl that you had the dance with during your inauguration party. You find out that her name is Renoa. She's really excited to have you there. And we've got this plan. So basically, why they've hired Seed, they want them to help kidnap the president of Galbadia, President Delling. They even got the whole city named after himself. So anyway, your first mission now. Technically, you're still a rookie Seed. You've only just become a Seed of this mercenary force. And your first mission, I kid you not, is to get on top of a moving train. Like, while the train's moving, you're on top of it. You have to manually uncouple another train, like, while crawling along the roof and avoiding the guard's sensors and all that. You then have to grab a cable and, like, slide down. You don't actually have to... It's all just scene and text-based. You just enter as you're entering the codes for it. It sounds difficult. I'm making it sound difficult, but the whole process of it's actually very easy gameplay-wise. But that's a mission. Get on top of moving trains, jump from one train to the other from the roof. Like, that's not dangerous or anything. And then you uncouple the trains, and then you sort of take off with the president's car. Turns out it's a body double, it's a big zombie monster. You get into a fight, then you end up back at Timber, and you end up back on your train, your original train, and they're like, I can't believe we fell for it. Then you stop at the town of Timber, and you learn that the real president is at the TV station. There's this big TV station in the town of Timber. So your party decide to go there. As you walk through the crowd, the Galbadian soldiers are all on alert because you tried to hijack their train. As you get to the TV station, as you walk up to the TV, on the outside you see like a little speech with the president, and then Cypher, out of everyone, the guy you had at the Seed test, your rival, he suddenly storms in and he takes the president like hostage, and you're like, okay, let's get in there. And also, just before, as you're outside watching on that TV, you kind of get into an argument with Renoa, and she runs off. Turns out her and Cypher actually know each other. Squall's kind of bummed about it. Just give me a minute, I just need a drink. Ugh, that's better. Okay, how many stones have I got? 24. Okay, so TV station, you go into the TV station and you tell Cypher what the hell he's doing. He's like, I've come to, like, It's obvious what you're planning to do with this guy, isn't it? He's just kind of off his head, he always is. And then Zell's like, I get it, you're Renault's, like, him and Renoa are like, sort of a taking a break boyfriend-girlfriend kind of scenario. But anyway, Zell blurts out that you're all from the garden, and then the president's like, ah, see, you're all from Balam Garden. Should anything happen to me, the entire army will literally crush the garden, crush your school. So Cypher sort of drags him back into the back of the TV studio. And then what happens is, in the opening cutscenes, you see Sorceress, like this big sort of like magic casting lady. You see her in the opening cutscenes, all sort of dressed up, purple and black, kind of gothic looking. She appears and kind of like uses a mind trick, sort of like a Jedi mind trick on Cypher. She lets go of the president, and then Cypher goes with Edea. They both sort of like vanish into like the side of the wall. Nobody knows where they've gone, so you all end up at like one of Renoa's friend's house in the city of Timber, and it's all just chit chat from there. Pretty much, you leave the town of Timber, and your goal is to head onto the town. No, not the town. You have to head to Galbadia Garden, because the Galbadia Garden is kind of against the Sorceress, as the story goes. But anyway, you can go to Dollar at this time as well. You can take a little detour, do some side quests. But anyway, you head through a little forest on your way to Galbadia Garden. While you're inside the forest, you have another little argument with Renoa, and then Squall, Selphie and Quistis all pass out and they go to the Dream World. The second Dream World, there is a lot of side quest stuff to do here, but the main story of it is you're making your way through this like excavation site, Laguna, Kiros and Ward. They have no idea where they are. Laguna's brought the wrong map, and as they fumble their way pushing, Laguna likes to push rocks, he likes to set off detonators not knowing how powerful they are. The whole thing's a comedic mess. It's actually quite funny, all the dialogue there. But anyway, you make your way through to the end. You get chased out by Esther soldiers, which is another army. So you've got the Galbadian army, you've also got the Esther army. And they don't like each other. Esther are the bad guys when you're in the dream sequences. When you're in the real world, the Galbadian army is more the evil one. Esther comes later in the game. So anyway, Laguna, Kiros and Ward get chased all the way to the edge of this cliff by Esther soldiers. You win the battle, but Ward's injured. His throat was injured. He can no longer speak. And so like they're on the end of a big cliff, and Laguna looks down. He's like, oh man, there's boats down in the water. So he picks Laguna picks Kiros and Ward up and just kind of gives them a helping hand as they both jump off the cliff and into the water towards the boats. And Laguna's like, man, you guys sure have guts, you know how high this cliff is. He then carefully tries to crawl down it, slips and sort of like starts bashing into like all the rocks and stuff as he falls down this cliff. And that's where the dream sequence ends, and it looks like Laguna may have fallen off the cliff and died, but you don't know yet. So your characters wake up back in the forest, you get out of the forest, you head to Galbadia Garden, and basically the Galbadia Garden says, can the seed party please wait in the second floor room? And as you go up to that second floor room, Quistis comes back in. She knows the garden master, they've had a chat. So basically, because Cypher took the president hostage, he's been tried, he's been caught, and he's been found guilty, and he has been executed, which is a big shock to your party. So Cypher has been sort of like tried and found guilty. He has already been killed, and so your party now has to assassinate the sorceress. That's a new mission that you're given. It's an order from both Balam and Galbadia Garden. So you're at the side of the school, and this is where you collect up your 6th party member. So in your party you've got Squall, Zell and Selphie as before. Renoa is also a party member. Quistis as well, and now you get Irvine, who's a student at Galbadia Garden. He's a sharpshooter, he uses guns. Kind of thinks himself as a ladies' man kind of deal. sort of an unlikable character, but he plays a massive role in the game. He's actually one of the better characters in the game in the end. But anyway, you head off from Galbadia Garden, you jump on a train and you head to the capital, which is Delling City, named after the president himself. This is where the first dream sequence happened, so you're already sort of familiar with the town. Squall walks in, he's wondering if Laguna's out and about. So what happens? You head to the presidential residence. The guard says you need to take a detour and you need to go to the Tomb of the Unknown King, which is where you get another GF. You get multiple of them throughout the game, the summons. So you go to that tomb, you beat the GF, you come back, you give the code of a sword you find on the floor. Really convoluted, doesn't exactly tell you much of how to do it. Confused the hell out of me when I was a kid, but you go back to... and now the thing is, I actually just put in the codes one by one when I was a kid, and the code ended up being 009. The code is completely random out of like 0 to 99 to 999 numbers, so... And I couldn't figure out how to get past that part of the game until I just happened to put the right code in. If that never happened, who knows? I may never have actually been able to... Oh, I'm sure I would have. But anyway, moving on, after you get back to the presidential residence where you give the guard the code, you go in, you meet with General Caraway. Now, what you find out here is General Caraway is actually Rinoa's father. So, General Caraway is a top military guy, whereas his daughter is the leader of a resistance faction against that very army, that very government. So that's kind of a family issue there. Anyway, General Caraway kind of locks Rinoa in a room, and then he gives you the briefing. He says Rinoa hasn't received, you know, the type of training that you all have and will become a burden. So your mission is to assassinate the sorceress. So the sorceress is planning to overrule and become the leader of Galbadia Garden, take control of the Galbadian army, and basically they want world domination. But there is a bigger secret behind, which you'll find out later in the game. So after you get like this briefing on what you need to do with the mission, a party needs to shut the gate, the other party needs to engage the battle and try the assassination. So in a little while you start the mission, you can roam around the town and do some side quest stuff, but the main story, you go back to General Caraway's mansion, you say let's start the mission. Squall and Irvine get in position at the gates of the presidential palace, and basically they wait for the gate to shut because there's going to be a parade. The sorceress is throwing this parade to announce herself as the ruler, and she's going to come on, you know those big parade floats, those big sort of like square shaped vehicles that sort of like ride along parades? She's on one of them. So what happens is, that's the mission. Quistis kind of yelled at Rinoa a little bit, as Rinoa ends up getting out of the room, and Quistis is like, we have a job to do, and Rinoa's like, I want you to listen to me, have a look at this ring I found, it's supposed to suppress sorceress powers. Quistis yells at her and then runs off. Rinoa gets upset. Quistis, Zell and Selphie all go to this gate, which they're going to activate the lever and sort of trap the sorceress in between two sets of gates, and then they're going to be able to take a pot shot with a sniper rifle. That's the whole plan. And what happens, so they don't really need all three of them to close the gate, do they? But anyway, all three of them end up leaving their post, and Quistis is like, I'm going to go say sorry to Rinoa, kind of yelled at her. For some reason, Zell and Selphie go with her. You know, one of them at least could have stayed at the gate, but that's gaming logic. And as soon as you run back to the mansion, General Caraway's talking to Rinoa. He's like, alright, time to lock you in. Rinoa decides to run and make her escape out the house. Just as Quistis, Zell and Selphie all walk into the house, the door locks and they are now locked in the room, and there's no one to operate the gate unknowingly to anyone else, so oh dear. Now you gain control of Rinoa and you end up climbing over some boxes. You get up on this barge thing. up sort of like where the presidential residence is, where the sorceress is currently hanging out. So she's like the main evil person in this. So Rinoa ends up getting up there. She says a few words, and basically she wants to put this magic bangle on the sorceress to suppress her powers. Obviously it goes wrong. Rinoa ends up getting the bangle put on herself by accident, and then the sorceress does like this speech, and so everyone thinks that the sorceress is going to declare world peace. It is not the case. That's what the president was alluring to earlier in the TV station. Before he got attacked by Cypher, he was calling for world peace. What actually happens is the sorceress is like, yeah, we'll advocate for world peace, and when she gets hold of the microphone, she basically announces her reign of terror. Everyone belongs to her. Anyone who doesn't, basically do as they're told is going to get torn to shreds. The president tries to intervene, and then he gets killed, and then Edie is like, your wildest fantasy has just begun, gives out a chuckle, and then pretty much Rinoa starts getting attacked by these two monsters that the sorceress set upon her. So then Squall and Irvine are like, crap, we got to get up there, but they can't because the gate's locked. Like the actual gates to the residence, the parade hasn't started yet, so the gates aren't open. So then you go back to the house where Quistis, Zell and Selphie are locked in, and basically they have to escape. They find a little secret tunnel thing which leads into the sewers. They go through the sewers, and as they're about halfway through, your party flicks back to Squall and Irvine, who are outside the presidential palace. The parade's in full swing. They can get through the gate. They go up to the top of the place. They rescue Rinoa from the two enemies. Cool, she's safe. They go downstairs to where the sniper rifle's lading. It's a carousel, big spinning thing that's going to come up as soon as the clock strikes 20th hour. So 8 o'clock at night. And that's going to give them the ability to take the shot at the sorceress. Now, as you go down, Irvine sits by the gun, and then he starts having a panic attack, and Squall's like, oh crap, that's not good. Flicks back to the other party. You make your way through to the end of the sewer. You get out of the sewer, and the sewer's entrance, conveniently, is in the same place as where the gate controls are. So obviously they get back just in time. They pull the gate lever, and 37 stones. I'm going to do a quick save just in case something goes wrong. So they pull the gate lever, the parade's in full swing. Sorceress goes under the gate, flick the switch. She's now trapped. Squall starts yelling at Irvine, just take the damn shot, grow a pair. Eventually Irvine takes a shot, Sorceress blocks it. So now you have to fight her manually. Squall jumps in, and Squall sees Cypher during the parade. Turns out Cypher is not dead. He is indeed on the sorceress's sort of like parade float, and he's sort of declared himself as her bodyguard, her companion. Basically, Cypher he calls himself the sorceress's knight. So anyway, you battle him, you beat him, and then you against the sorceress. Rinoa and Irvine join the battle. And when you beat Sorceress, you find out that her name's Edia, Sorceress Edia. When you defeat her, a little cutscene plays. She makes this big ice shard thing, and then she just like hucks it, and it hits Squall straight through the chest. Big sort of like icicle, sort of like javelin. And that's when Squall falls off. Rinoa's like screaming and reaching like, oh no, Squall. And then he falls, and that's where Disc 1 ends. Remember, on PS1 it was a 4-disc game. On the PS4 version, it just transitions to the next scene. I need another drink. Dang, alright. So what happens next? So now it transitions into Disc 2. And it's another dream sequence with Laguna. You wake up, you're in this town called Windhill. There's a little girl in there, her name is Elon. And so Laguna sort of like he's like in a bedroom, and this girl Ellen comes in. She's only like 5 or something, and so basically there's monsters all around the town. It's not safe technically for her to run next door to where Laguna's staying, so you run next door to this pub, and there's a woman in there named Rain. So Rain and Laguna kind of have like this little fling thing going on, even though none of them really like to admit it. Ellen, the little kid. So what happens then, Kiros walks in, and Laguna and Kiros haven't seen each other since Laguna fell off that cliff. And Laguna says, well, basically you find out that Laguna washed up on shore in this town of Windhill where Rain lives. Rain sort of like took care of him, got him back to full health, as Laguna was pretty badly injured. And what happens is Laguna, to repay the kindness, he stays in the town and he basically fights off monsters and sort of makes the town a bit safer. The townsfolk aren't too fond of him because he's, you know, an outsider. But anyway, Kiros comes in, and Kiros was like, Laguna, didn't you want to be a journalist? Ain't you going to travel the world? And Laguna's like, I kind of want to stay here, you know. And Kiros is like, Laguna, it sounds like you've changed a bit, man. So anyway, Laguna and Kiros, they do a patrol of the town looking for monsters. You come back and you hear Rain and Ellen talking. And Laguna's like, let's come back later. And Kiros is like, nah, let's like eavesdrop on them. And you find out that like Laguna's hearing that Rain sort of has a thing for him. Ellen, she really likes Laguna and hopes that he'll stay. And then Rain's like, I'll cook lunch, you and Kiros go wait in the room, sort of like in the next house next door where Laguna lives. Him and Kiros go there, and Laguna's like, Kiros, I hope I wake up in this bed. Like, I don't want to leave Windhill. Rain and Ellen, like, he's kind of like, he's falling for Rain, and he really loves, like, Ellen has kind of become like a stepdad sort of figure. And Kiros is like, Laguna, man, yeah, you've definitely changed. And that's where the scene ends. You wake up with like your regular characters, Selphie, Zell, and Quistis, and Rinoa. They are in a jail cell. The guards come and they take Rinoa. They beat up Zell. Eventually Zell's like, none of us have got weapons. There's an anti-magic field, so they can't really do anything. Zell's weapon, he uses fist fighting based attacks, kind of like Tifa in Final Fantasy VII. So Zell goes, he gets the weapons back, and then you get into a battle with Wedge and Biggs, the Galbadian soldiers that you had during the seed test. Zell, Selphie, Wedge and Biggs, they all recognize each other, they all scream. It's quite funny as well. But basically you have to break out of the prison. It's a long process. It's one of the worst parts of the game. It's tedious, it takes ages, there's side quest stuff that you can't. There's also an exploit to get a really rare item that you can keep using. It's a lengthy process. But anyway, there's a big kerfuffle. Rinoa and Irvine end up back in the prison as well. They're trying to break you out. So eventually, yeah, okay, you break out of the prison. I won't go through all the details because it just takes too long. But what you find out in the prison is that Cypher has, in cahoots with Sorceress Edia, the bad, sort of like the main villain, has decided to launch missiles at the garden, at the schools. So there's one in Balam, there's another one in Trebia. Galbadia Garden is now under control by the Sorceress. So there's 3 different like mercenary schools. So basically Sorceress Edia is going to launch missiles at Trebia and Balam Garden to sort of get rid of any threats to her power. And what happens from there? I haven't been recording again. Check. Cool, that's still working. Okay. Start new recording. Okay. Exiting out of menu, I have 43 pretty stones in 3, 2, 1 circle. Okay, I didn't have the PS5 recording, but because it does where you can sort of recover the last hour, I'm lucky because this is what I did in the last file. So I've created some editing work for myself, but that's okay. Everything is recording again now. Where was I up to in the story of Final Fantasy VIII? Sorceress Edia, what was I saying? Yes, so she's going to fire missiles at Trabea and Balamb Garden. You find that out in the prison, so after you get out of the prison, you and all your party members, you all sort of meet up. You get out of the prison, you still basically commandeer 2 vehicles, and as you're driving, you both stop in the road. So what Irvine has heard is that they're launching missiles at the gardens. So your party decide that, okay, 3 of us are going to go to the missile base and they are going to try and interfere with the launch. The other 3 are going to go to Balamb Garden. They're going to try and warn and try and evacuate everyone. As they're talking about this, they see a bunch of missiles get launched. Irvine goes, I heard they were hitting Trabea Garden first, then Balamb. So Selphie's like, Selphie transferred from Trabea Garden, that's why she was late in the hallway, right at the start of the game. She says, yeah, she just transferred from Trabea. So she's like, oh, that was a miss, right? Squall, being the jackass, he doesn't say anything, doesn't try to comfort anyone. Anyway, so Selphie decides that she's leading the missile base team. Squall will go back to Balamb Garden. Squall doesn't like being the leader either, but anyway, you can sort of pick and choose who you want to take. It does influence some dialogue in the game, but anyway, so Squall says, alright, let's do it. He goes with 2 of the party members and he sort of like commandeers this train with 2 Galbadian soldiers, and one of the soldiers is like running after the train, quite humorous. And then that scene ends, so presumably they would have went to Timber and then caught the train to Balamb, because that's the only way you can actually do it in game, but you don't actually see that scene. While that would canonically be happening, you're now in control of Selphie. You've got this Galbadian missile base car that come out of the prison. They reckon maybe we can trick the guards with this. So you head over to the missile base in this car. There's a few uniforms in there. You're in disguise, so you go into this base, you make your way through it, and there's a few different ways you can go about it. But basically, it ends with you getting at the control panel. You interfere with the missile launch. You up the error ratio, so you've made it less likely that the missiles are going to hit their target. Then you get into a battle with the base leaders. You end up outside of the missile base, where you get into this big sort of... before you go outside, you initiate a detonation. Like, you basically say to the base to blow itself up. So, and then you head outside, you get into a battle with this big sort of like Galbadian robot sort of attack unit. Big machine thing that fires cannons and stuff at you. So you have to beat that battle, and then after you've beaten that, the door's closed, your party members are trapped in the missile base. They're running around and they're like, oh crud, we're trapped. What do? We can't get out. And then boom, the base blows up in a massive mushroom cloud of an explosion. And you as a player are now looking and you're thinking, crap, how did those 3, how are they going to survive that? So the next scene, Squall has ended up back at Balamb Garden with his 2 selected party members. And no missiles have hit. The school's in one piece, so that's a good sign. But anyway, the missiles might be on their way, so we better hurry. So what happens is Squall and the 2 party members, they enter the school, which is in complete chaos. Everyone's running around. All the students are like running around in a panic, and Squall's like, are they evacuating? No, what's actually happening at this time in the school, the garden faculty, like the staff members, are calling out for the students to find and kill their headmaster Sid. And Squall's like, whoa, what in the world is going on? So 2 sides are being formed. You're either with the Garden Master, the Headmaster Sid. You're either with Headmaster Sid or you're with the true Garden Master Norg. And you have no idea who that is. So anyway, you run around all the spots in the school, have some chat, and then you end up finding the headmaster in his office. They made it look like he was hiding. And he's like, yeah, this Garden Master stuff's messy business. But anyway, Squall, what's up? He's like, missiles may be heading, we have to evacuate. And Sid's like, oh, crud, okay. So he has this idea, but he's too old, he can't do it. So Squall's like, let me handle it. He gives you a key for the elevator shaft in the school, and he says, if you go down to this level, there's supposed to be some sort of mechanism down there, because the garden, it was a shelter long before it was remodeled into the school that you know it, so maybe something in there will prove effective against a missile. So I was like, alright, well, we might as well try. So you head on down the elevator shaft. There's a big sort of like array of tunnels and stuff that you got to get through. Some battles and stuff as well down there. But anyway, it concludes with you ending up at this sort of like big control system. And after Squall fiddles a bit, some mechanisms start turning, some wheels start turning. And then Squall and the party is like, sort of like amazed, everything's turning. They get launched up on this big platform that goes through the headmaster's office. And then basically what happens is there's this ring that's like above your school, like at all times. That sort of moves underneath the school. Your entire bricks and mortar school rip out of the ground and starts flying. If you fail the missile base mission, like you run out of time or something in it, you actually get this secret scene where the school gets blown up. But anyway, your school lifts out the ground, it takes off, like it actually starts, it's floating and it can move back and forth. All the missiles come in, they hit the ground, and your school is safe. You have dodged the missiles. Now what's happening is the school is heading right for the town of Balam. Squall fiddles with the controls and he gets it to turn and they crash into the ocean, but it's upright. The school's floating on the water. So they're like, okay, we can drift around for a bit, we're fine for now. Let's figure out our next move, take some time to plan. And Squall he starts thinking about the other party members, hope they're safe and whatnot and all that. After that, you get out of your dorm room, you go for a wander, and one of the garden faculty members who was like ordering everyone to find Headmaster Sid comes up to you and he's like, the Garden Master Norg has summoned you. So you go down there, he's a Shumi. It's a type of race. It's kind of a humanoid, big, bobbly, yellow-looking thing. So Norg says that he's the Garden Master. He reveals some stuff to you in chit-chat, but anyway, Headmaster Sid and the evil sorceress Edia are actually husband and wife. The garden was both their idea. Like, they're the ones behind the thing of, like, the garden and all that, and Squall's like, bruh, what? And Norg said it was his money that funded it, and now Sid and Edie are trying to take the garden away from him. You also find out that when you went to Galbadia Garden and you were tasked with assassinating the sorceress, that wasn't an order from Balam Garden. Norg's being framed for placing that order, and now he wants to offer the seeds to like your school's mercenary thing code to the sorceress in exchange for her letting them live and all this. So a lot of like game twist stuff is revealed here. Squall and the party, they battle Norg, you beat him. And then after that, you go and find Headmaster Sid, and Sid's in the infirmary. And Squall's obviously got a lot of questions. Sid will like answer him in chit chat and all that, but Squall's like, well, what do we do now? And Sid's like, well, we must stop drifting soon. Then you go into your dormitory, you walk around the school again. Then the next thing that happens is one of the side characters, she's another seed in the garden, Zoo. she comes up to you and says, there's a ship approaching, a Galbadian ship. Or there could be some conflict here, or Galbadian soldiers might be on board, or even worse, the sorceress might be aboard, coming to attack us and whatnot. So you go outside to like the balcony, and sure enough, there's this ship that's pulled aside, and they're like, we're unarmed, we're coming aboard. So they jump aboard your school's balcony, and they're like, we're seeds, we're white seeds, we're Edia's seeds, so there's some confusion here. But they say, we're looking for a girl named Ellen, and Squall's like thinking to himself, Ellen, the girl from Windhill? And Headmaster Sid is like, Squall, you know who she is, go find her. Anyway, Squall goes for a wander, and if you go into the library, you can also have a quick chat with Ellen just before all this scene happens and stuff. And Squall's like, he can't remember who she is, but Ellen is like, try and remember, so Squall's like, okay, I've met her before. After this scene with the white seed ship, Squall goes back to the library and he says, are you Ellen, like the Ellen from Windhill, Laguna, Rain, and blah blah? And Ellen's like, yes, and Squall like kind of has a big sook at her, like, what's all this past stuff that we're experiencing? Okay, so we're viewing the past and all this blah blah. And Ellen's like, it's a long story, but so basically you find out that Ellen has the power to send people's consciousness back into the past and they can view it. So that's like a mysterious power. And what you eventually find out is that Ellen is hiding from Sorceress Edia. Sorceress Edia is after Ellen for her mysterious power. So Ellen ends up going aboard this white seed ship along with Headmaster Sid. He's like, yeah, it's too dangerous here. And basically what happens next after Ellen goes away from this ship, Headmaster Sid gets on the intercom, which has been fixed. And then he's like, oh, and he starts like yelling, and then he's like, Squall, please come to the bridge. Squall's like, oh, what now? Basically, your school crashes into the side of this harbour town that's out in the middle of the ocean. It's called Fisherman's Horizon, and like your school crashes into it. Headmaster Sid calls Squall. Squall, can you go do all the work? So basically, you got to go into the town, you got to find the mayor, you got to apologise, say we don't know how to move our garden, can you please help us? There's technicians in FH were the ones who painted it and built stuff in it like many years ago, as is revealed at this point in the game. So you find the mayor, he says, yeah, we'll help you out. The mayor's a pacifist, he doesn't like military organizations, kind of like he doesn't like your school either. So, and right after you leave his house, Galbadia starts attacking FH. You save the mayor's life. You end up getting into a battle with the same robot that your party from the missile base got into a battle with. And after you win that battle, your party members crawl out of the robot. That's how they survived. They got into the big robot they were battling, and that shielded them from the blast from the missile base when they detonated it with its inbuilt destruction. So all your party members are back. You get the Galbadians out of FH, and you find out that Sorceress Edia is after Alone. All the Galbadian soldiers are like asking for her, and they're going to burn down everything in their path until they find her. So what happens next? The FH people fix your garden. They teach one of the students how to fly it. And after all is said and done, Squall gets this promotion. He's now the unquestioned leader of the garden. He's going to lead the battle against the sorceress against his will, without even asking him if he wants the responsibility. No, it's his destiny and all this. So Squall's party members, Quistis, Zell, Selphie, Renoa, and Irvine, they all think it's a grand idea to throw Squall a big concert to congratulate him. And they're also trying to get Squall and Renoa together kind of thing. So at FH, they set up a big stage. Your party members play instruments. You can select them to play a song depending on the ones. You pick, depending on what instruments you pick for everybody, will determine how the scene plays out. Renoa has 3 different outcomes. She will either get really angry at Squall, she will have no strong opinion either way, or Squall and Renoa will both leave being happy-ish with each other. After the concert, there's some discussion about what to do next, and the discussion comes up, oh, maybe we should go to Balam and check on Balam. It's another harbour town, the sorceress might attack it, and all this, so that's the decision. Yep, you go to Balam. Sure enough, there's Galbadia Garden, which is now also flying. And Galbadia is now, like, taken the town of Balam hostage. So you got to break in there, you got to sneak around, you got to do some sleuthing around. And you end up finding Fujin and Rajan. You've seen them a couple of times through the game. I haven't mentioned them yet. They only play very minor roles. But they're Cypher's friends. They're like a posse. And anyway, you find out that Fujin and Rajan are like the commanders of the Galbadian army that are occupying Balam. You fight them in the hotel after you kind of do some stuff to progress through the game. And so basically they're not doing it because they want to, they're doing it because of Cypher. You know, they're a posse, they're going to stick with him and all this, even though he's sided with the evil sorceress. And Zell says to Fujin and Rajan, well, you go back and you tell Cypher to, you know, cut this crap out and all this. So that's what happens. They leave Balam. Balam's been liberated. And so now you're back up on sort of like the bridge, the cockpit area of the school. You're trying to think about where to go next. Selphie comes in and she's like, can we go to Trebia Garden? And Squall's like, oh, wasn't it destroyed by missiles? And he's like, oh yeah, of course, that's why she'd want to go. So anyway, you set off, you go over the continents and you go over to the continent of Trebia. You find Trebia Garden and it is in a rubbled mess. The missiles have hit it directly. So you enter the school and mostly it's just Selphie running around talking to her friends. You make your way to a basketball court. And after some chit-chat you go into sort of like this long dialogue scene. But some memories start getting brought up. Irvine says when he was a kid there was plenty of kids at this orphanage that he was at. And all of them had no parents and whatnot. It was after the Sorceress War, which is an event that happened in like the years prior to the game. Game dialogue, you sort of read all about it and stuff. But anyway, Irvine says of all the kids, one of them was really special to him and all this. And then it like cuts back and Selphie approaches Irvine's like, was that orphanage by the ocean? And Quistis was like, was that by a lighthouse as well? And it is revealed that your party members, Squall, Zell, Selphie, Irvine and Quistis, all of your party members all grew up together as kids in this orphanage and now they're all like tripping balls because they've all just remembered this. So they were all sort of like childhood, they all lived at this orphanage as a childhood under this sort of like one, there was like this one caretaker. And so all these memories start coming back. Everyone had forgotten them. Apparently it's the price they pay for using the Guardian Forces, the summons and stuff, and being Junction and getting that power. Squall ends up finding out from his memories, he's always waiting for someone called Sis to come back. And you hear in his memory, Sis Ellie. Ellie is short for Ellen. And it turns out that Ellen was also part of the orphanage as well. She was a little bit older. But now that's another head spin for the party. And then they're saying about, oh, what about Matron? We used to all call her Matron, the caretaker. Who was she? And then they all sort of like, they've all, like the game's like sort of playing at the orphanage, but all the characters are there, but it's kind of like in their memory. And then they're all like, hang on, yeah, we just pictured her face and Matron and Sorceress Edia kind of look alike. And Irvine goes, no, that's not it. Matron's name is Edia Kramer. Matron is Sorceress Edia. And all of them are just in a state of shock. They're like, wait, the caretaker who took care of us when we were kids at this orphanage is the evil sorceress that we're fighting against? And they're like, whoa, what the hell? And also Cypher was also at this orphanage as well. He was always picking on Zell, as Cypher really is he's just not a nice person in the game. But so that's what they all find out. So they're all kind of having a big sort of head spin over it. And they all kind of like bring up all these memories, and they're all like, man, it's crazy how we forgot all this stuff, but where does that leave us now? We're fighting against someone who we all loved as a kid, as she's the one who took care of us. Now she's evil and we have to battle against her. Rinoa, as the odd one out who didn't grow up in the orphanage, she's like, is there a way we don't have to fight and all this? But Rinoa's scared of getting like sort of left behind from everyone. But everyone's like, Rinoa, we want you to come with us. So the agreement is that all of your party members are like, hey, we should go try and find Edia's orphanage. I wonder what it's like now. Maybe we'll find a clue as to why Edia became evil and started chasing Ellen and doing all these things. So they're like, alright, we're in agreement. You float over to the continent of Centra. If you dig around and talk to enough people, you can get a clue on where to look for it. Took me a long time to find it when I played it originally as a kid, but anyway, you find the lighthouse, you find Edia's orphanage, and sure enough, Galbadia Garden is hovering around. And Squall's like, alright, the battle is inevitable. It's Balamb Garden versus Galbadia Garden. Basically, the two schools start bashing into each other like they both fly. There's a big battle, all the Galbadian soldiers end up invading your school. Squall tries his best to organise troops and all this, and obviously it turns into a giant just cluster bomb of fails. But eventually your school's losing. Zell asked Squall to borrow his ring, he then gave it to Rinoa. When the schools smash into each other, Rinoa, like this like part of the school gets broken off, and Rinoa falls down, and she's like hanging onto the side of like the rock sort of wall of the school, and she's basically looking down. They're way up in the air having this big battle. Rinoa's basically looking at her. If she falls, she's gone, like she's dead, and she's hanging on for dear life. Zell can't reach her, so like Zell has to try and find a way. He can't find anything, so he sort of like leaves it to Squall. Please go save Rinoa and all this. Squall goes to the second floor. There's this girl there. She's like, please help me find Mark. I can't find him. It's just a random character. There's no significance to the story. Squall goes down the second floor corridor, finds this kid, and as he runs off, this Galbadian soldier on this big sort of like hovering vehicle comes over and attacks him. Basically, Squall goes out the emergency exit. You're now outside. You got to punch the Galbadian soldier off of like the flying machine, and Squall uses that. He goes over and he saves Rinoa, picks her up. They both fly over. There's a big battle happening on the. Oh no! Oh dear! I hit circle by accident. Anyway, yeah, there's a big battle happening. So there you go. Riku does kind of stop, and he starts walking here. So he kind of lets you win in a way, but if you take too long, he will beat you. I was actually very lucky there. Anyway, the Battle of the Gardens. So you know what? I'm gonna go save, just in case. So the Battle of the Gardens, they end up sort of like mashing each other into the ground, and it gives you a chance to sort of like walk over, and you board over onto Galbadia Garden. Now it's your turn. Cypher's inside there, he's sort of like commanding it all. And your job now is to go in and have this final confrontation with Cypher and Sorceress Edia. 67 pretty stones. And so basically what you do is you You make your way through Galbadia Garden. There's a little bit of a sort of like a convoluted puzzle. You see Fujin and Rajan in there, but you don't battle them. You find Cypher, you find Edia sort of like in the, sort of like at the back of the school. You battle Cypher, you beat him, Edia floats down, you have to chase after her, you battle her, you beat her, and now after you beat Edia, there's this little scene where Rinoa is like walking in sort of a possessed kind of state, and she sort of like bends down next to Cypher. Cypher sits up and then just walks off, and then Rinoa just like collapses to the ground, and then Edia starts calling out everyone by name and says, "You've all grown so much and become so strong. Where is Ellen? Have I protected her?" and all this. So she's suddenly good again after she's been beaten. And then Quistis calls out, "Squall, something's wrong with Rinoa, she ain't moving." And that's where disc 2 ends and transitions into disc 3 if you're playing the original PS1 version. What happens next is, so after the battle, you wake up back, you're in your dorm room, and it's like, oh, the battle's over, Rinoa, what happened to Rinoa? Scene skips, and then you're sort of like next to the bed, and you get a intercom call. You go up to the bridge, they say that Sorceress Edia is back at the orphanage, and your party decide to go in and see her, have a bit of a chat, get a lowdown on what's happened. And as your party go into the orphanage and you're chatting with Edia, you see Sid in there, and he's like, "Are you angry with me? I don't blame you." He kind of just took off and ran. He didn't want to face a consequence. You know, if Squall was defeated, it would be the end of Seed and Garden and pretty much the free world. If Squall won, it would mean Headmaster Sid losing his wife Edia, because they are still married. But anyway, I just hit the X button instead of circle. I've done it again. This is why you save while doing this. So this should be okay. Did Riku just fall out of the trees? Huh. Anyway. So Edia, while you're talking to her at the orphanage, so they're like, okay, so give us a lowdown. Edia says she was under the possession of Sorceress Ultimecia. She is an evil sorceress from the future. She is after Ellen's mysterious power of sending people to the past. I need the help of the seeds because Sorceress Ultimecia may possess me again at any time. And so basically, Edia says like, okay, Seeds, I'll need your help. And then Squall, kind of in his own world, but he eventually says Rinoa went unconscious after the battle. Edia says she doesn't know what happened. And so what's the next move? They decide, okay, well, we need to go and find Ellen. Maybe Ellen can send Squall into Rinoa's past, and Squall can figure out what happened, why she went unconscious after the battle. Last time we saw her, she was getting on board that white seed ship that came and stopped by the garden, and she went and jumped on. So they're like, okay, we'll ask Edia. Edia might know where that ship is because they said they were Edia seeds. Edia says they don't stay in one place, but they're around Centra somewhere, the continent. You skate around some of the inlets. Eventually you find this boat. After you talk to the leader, it's revealed that Ellen, she was on the boat for a little while. You also see Zone and Watts, the two characters who were on the train with Rinoa, are also on the boat. But anyway, it's sort of revealed to you that their boat broke down and they were being chased by the Galbadian army. So they were pretty much caught. Then an Esper ship appeared. A big battle started between Esper and Galbadia, and their ship was caught in the middle. And then Ellen I used to pronounce her name as Elone, but I think it's pronounced Ellen. Anyway, she jumped off the White Seed ship and boarded the Esther ship. And it was unknown why she did it. And that ship took off. The Galbadians chased after Esther. The White Seeds basically went off to repair their ship, and they just had no explanation as to why Ellen jumped on the Esther ship and took off with them. So what happens then is Squall decides, okay, let's go to Esther. And what's revealed is that the terrain of the area isn't really suited for flying the Garden, so they have to find another way there. So what they do, they go back to Edia's house and they say about, everything that happened. Edia says, alright, I'm going to come with you. There's someone in Esther called Dr. O'Dine. He knows how to suppress sorceress powers. He may be able to help me. So basically, your party is going to go with Edia to Esther. They're going to escort her there. The easiest way to get there is to go to FH, go by the train thing. There's a continent link between FH and Esther. And basically, so you go to FH, Fisherman's Horizon, and you go across the train link. Your Squall is literally carrying Rinoa on his back, carries her the whole way across. You get to the little train link thing there. Then you're on the other side of the continent. You head over and there's this like big, great salt lake. And the theme music that plays there, my god, so haunting. Beautiful theme, but man, haunting as hell. So you cross the salt lake, and as you're going through, you find this little hole sort of like up in the sky, and everyone's like, whoa, what the hell? And they can feel that there's a ladder there. They can't see it, but they can feel it. They climb up the ladder, they go through the tunnel, little hole in the sky, and they find this little control panel. And it turns out that Esther's known as the Silent Country, and you just can't see a city. It's supposed to be huge, but no one can see anything but endless sky and like sort of field plains. And then it's revealed, okay, they must be using this control panel. They must have panels around the city which is reflecting the sky to make it appear invisible. So you come out of this tunnel, you get onto this sort of like platform, and sure enough, Squall passes out. He's got another dream sequence of Laguna, and he's like, oh, this is not a good time. And so Squall falls down, and Laguna, Kiros, and Ward, assuming you haven't been to the Shumi village side quest and picked up the magazine, Ward will be in the party as well. They are on a movie set because Laguna has no money. He's trying to make some money. They get attacked by ruby dragons. You have to manually fight one with a gunblade. It's like a little mini game. But the story is that like Laguna's in this movie, and he sees at the end of this scene, the scene of this one's actually quite short, but he sees this big monolith structure sort of like moving across the ocean. He's like, whoa, what's that? It ends, and then Squall wakes up. Edie is there. She's standing around with some people from Esther along with the rest of your party. They escort you to the main town city of Esther. You go inside the city. It's like monstrous. It's massively huge. Biggest city in the game. You end up going to Dr. O'Dine's office. You have a bit of a chat with him. Hold on, I've missed a scene. Oh yeah, after you go from Edia's house, I have missed a scene. You have to forgive me for that. There was another dream sequence earlier when Squall was standing by Rinoa's bed after you visit Edia for the first time. This is before you find the White Seed ship and get all that revealed. That's where that scene happens with Laguna and the movie. When you're on the platform, the next one the dream sequence that plays then is the one where Laguna, Kiros, and Ward are trapped in Dr. O'Dine's research lab, and you sort of see that character for the first time. After you break out of there, Dr. O'Dine, you find out in this flashback that he has taken captive of Ellen because he wants to study her power. Laguna has gone after Ellen after she was abducted from Windhill. It turns out that what had actually happened is that Galbadia... Oh no, this is in the past. These are in the dream sequences. So Esther were the bad guys, and they were under the rule of sorceress Adele. And they went after Ellen. They kidnapped her, abducted her, took her to Esther. That's why Laguna left Windhill and went in search to try to get into Esther to rescue Ellen. Sorry. So basically you break your way out of this lab and then you head over to Dr. O'Dine's lab, and Laguna's like, "Where's Ellen? I've come to rescue her." So Ellen and Laguna are reunited in this dream sequence, and it basically ends with the story of Laguna is going to take Ellen back to Windhill. It's revealed later, but what actually happens is in that dream sequence with Dr. O'Dine in the lab where Laguna, Kiros and Ward were sort of like captive for a bit, Laguna ends up becoming recruited as like someone who's going to help defeat Sorceress Adele. And he wasn't really paying attention at the time, but anyway, he returns Ellen to Windhill, and then he goes back to Esther to help him fight Sorceress Adele. And it turns out what actually happened is Rain... I just need to get the story right because you're going from past and present. When Laguna left Windhill to go find Ellen in Esther, Rain passes away. And it turns out Rain was pregnant, and Laguna, no doubt, was actually the father of the baby. And so after Laguna rescues Ellen from Esther, Ellen is sort of like escorted back to Windhill. Laguna stays in Esther because he made this promise to help him overthrow Sorceress Adele, so Adele can't come after Ellen again. But Ellen goes back to Windhill, Rain died, and then Ellen and Rain's baby get sent to the orphanage. That's how Ellen and the baby, who turns out to be Squall. That's a bit of a spoiler for the story already, but Ellen and the baby, they go to the orphanage. That's how Squall and Ellen end up at the orphanage. The Sorceress War is how like all the other characters lost their parents. And after that, Laguna ends up becoming president of Esther. Now, after your party gets to Esther, you talk to Dr. O'Dine. He's going to help Edia get rid of her powers. O'Dine also wants to study Renoa. Squall's looking for Ellen in present-day time. So it turns out that Ellen is actually in outer space. Squall has to go to the Lunar Gate and he has to blast off into space to go meet Ellen. So that's what he does. You leave the city of Esther, you go to the Lunar Gate, you then blast off into space. As you're blasting off into space, you only take 2 party members. Zell escorts Edia back to Esther after they see this big monolith structure moving across. It just sort of comes out of nowhere. And Dr. O'Dine says it's the Lunatic Pandora. It's where you were in the Disc 1 dream sequence when Laguna was in the excavation site. It's the same one he saw in, I think it's dream sequence number 4, when I said he saw the big monolith when he was playing in the movie role. O'Dine says it is the Lunatic Pandora. It has an effect on the Lunar Cry, which is a phenomenon where monsters fall from the sky down onto the planet from the moon, and the Lunatic Pandora has an effect on that. And he says the Galbadians are controlling it, and it looks like they have a plan to use it to call monsters down from the moon. So anyway, Zell, Edia and your other party members, they all try and sort of prevent it. They get on board the Lunatic Pandora when it goes over the city of Esther. And what happens is they get on board, they end up getting into a fight with this big robot, and the robot sort of like flicks them out of it, and the Galbadians escape with their big monolith structure, Lunatic Pandora. Remember, Luna is a term for moon. That's how you get the word lunatic. That's how that big monolith structure gets its name. Next scene, Squall is up in outer space with a party member that he chose to go with him and Renoa's unconscious body. Squall puts Renoa sort of like in this bed in like the med bay, and then he goes off to find Ellen, who is up in this little room area up in this International Space Station thing that they're in. Squall and Ellen have a little bit of a chat, and Squall says, Ellen, I need you to send me into Renoa's past. She's with us on the ship. Ellen's like, I can't send people in the past to people I don't know, but so she's like, alright, let's go meet Renoa. As Squall and Ellen are on their way to see Renoa's body in the medbay, something happens. Renoa sort of like starts doing this possessed walk that she did earlier at the end of Disc 2 after Edea was beaten. So now Renoa's like possessed in outer space. With Squall, if you go up and you sort of like touch her, you get like flung across the screen. It's actually quite funny. But anyway, Renoa's like possessed walking around. There's a few scenes where you see the president in a spacesuit, the president of Esther. Unknowingly at the time, it is Laguna. And there's some scenes where you see the Lunar Cry starting to happen. And the issue is you find out that there is a tomb and it contains Sorceress Adele. So there's a little flashback scene with Laguna. I can't remember exactly where this flashback scene occurs. But anyway, what happens is Laguna's plan back in the past, you see it in a flashback scene, he lures Adele with a hologram of Ellen, because remember that's who the sorceress are after. Adele's sort of like under the possession of Sorceress Ultimecia as well, but Adele is also evil. I know it doesn't make sense. It makes more sense as you play the game. It's hard to explain this part of the story because there's so many moving parts. But Laguna tricked Adele and sort of got her frozen in this sort of like crypt structure. Gets her frozen and then they blast her off into space where they... it's sort of like a protective barrier so Adele can't junction. She can't use any powers. It's up in outer space and that's how the Sorceress War ended. Pivotal moment of story in the game. Convoluted, difficult to understand, but... so anyway, what's happening is Renoa is possessed in outer space, and what she does on the International Space Station is she starts deactivating the seals to Adele's tomb, which is really, really bad. And what actually happens is Renoa gets... she's possessed, but she gets into a space suit, and she blasts off into space and actually goes up to the tomb itself and releases the final seal. Adele's tomb then gets swallowed by the Lunar Cry, which is a big stream of monsters going from the moon to down to like the planet Earth, that like the world, the actual world that you live on. It's a phenomena that happens like once every 17 years or something. That engulfs Adele's tomb, sends it down to the planet, and because the seal's broken, Adele's going to wake up. She's going to get possessed. Actually, I don't think she was possessed by Sorceress Ultimecia because it's revealed if because Adele was in that tomb, she couldn't be possessed by Ultimecia from the future. If it does happen, their power combined would be like unimaginable. So Renoa has been blasted off into space. She's been knocked out and she is drifting endlessly away in outer space. Squall is going absolutely berserk because he's losing the person he loves. She's going to be lost in space forever. Squall gets into a spacesuit and he blasts off into space, off to rescue Renoa. Knowingly that there's probably no way back, he just wants to be with her. Ellen does her best as they're in the escape pods. Ellen sends Squall into Renoa's past. And eventually he gets to the scene and he gets to see Renoa right before she passed out after the battle with Edea. And Squall sort of finds out that what actually happens is when Edea was beaten, she was under the possession of sorceress Ultimecia. Ultimecia's possession got beaten out when Edea got beaten in that battle, and she went and gave the powers unknowingly to Rinoa. So Rinoa is now a sorceress, and she's being possessed by Ultimecia. That's what's actually happening in outer space. Ultimecia used Rinoa to unlock Adele's tomb. So what happens now is Rinoa's awoken in space. She's reckons she's gonna die. She's sort of just floating around. There's a little mini game with Squall. You got to catch Rinoa in outer space, but now they're both low on oxygen, they're low on fuel. They're probably going to die. They're just drifting in space, but they're together at least. They can both die together. Or do they? Squall looks around and he notices that there is a big airship floating around in space, and they both end up sort of making their way over to it. They get in through the cargo door and there's air, they can breathe. You got to fight some monsters on it, but eventually you get to the cockpit, and the cockpit allows you to commune back on the planet with some Esther technicians. They're like, yeah, we can get you back down to the planet. There's a scene and Rinoa basically says to Squall, this is what happened, I've become a sorceress, Ultimecia possessed me. This is everything that happened. If Ultimecia possesses me again, you know, I'm going to be a danger to the world, just like Edea was. And so Squall and Rinoa sort of have this big moment, this big hugging scene. That's where the Eyes on Me song plays as well. They get back down to the planet, and people from Esther and the Esther Sorceress Memorial say, Sorceress Rinoa, we basically have to put you in sort of a tomb, the same as Adele, because, you know, of the danger of you being possessed again. Rinoa's like, I understand, Squall. I think this is the best. Squall's kind of like bummed and sad, of course. So Squall watches Rinoa get taken by the Esther people for the good of the world. Squall goes back into the Ragnarok and sits down, and then the rest of the party join. Your party member that you took to outer space says that them and Piet both woke up and they both got picked up by Esther. The rest of the party have found their way from Esther, met up with your party member, then they've gone back and they've found this Ragnarok ship that you come back to the planet in. Oh, where's Rinoa? Squall says Rinoa didn't want to stay, she wanted to go and be in confinement so she wasn't a danger to everyone. And they're like, Squall, you're a donut, go back and get her, that's what you want, right? We'll find a way to beat this evil sorceress from the future. So basically Selphie starts tinkering with the Ragnarok, the airship that you come down to the planet in, and she sort of just learns how to fly this giant ship. It doesn't make any sense. But Selphie's like, yeah, I think I can fly it as long as I don't crash. The pilot will change. They all sort of learn how to fly it, all of your party members. So you fly off to the Esther Sorceress Memorial, and they're like, you want to see your comrade off? Okay. You break into it, you break Rinoa out. She's like, Squall, what are you doing? Squall's like, I don't care, I'm staying with you, you're coming with us. You know, you're part of the group. Esther soldiers, they're not the bad guys at this point, but they're like, you know, you can't leave with this. Then this really, really tall man comes up and doesn't say anything, and Squall's like, thinking to himself, that man, I've seen him before. That person is actually Ward from the Dream Sequences, part of Laguna's party. So you, Rinoa, and the rest of your party, you escape, you're back in the Ragnarok. And they're like, okay, so where are we going? And Rinoa says, can we go to Edea's orphanage? And Squall's like, well, why do you want to go there? There's nothing there. And Rinoa's like, yeah, I know, but you know, maybe Edea can give me some advice and all this. You go to Edea's orphanage, you have a little bit of a chat with her. And then as you get back to the Ragnarok, actually as you're at Edea's place, there's this scene with Squall and Rinoa, and Squall repeats the same phrase that you saw in the opening cutscene of the game, that like, I'll be here for what? I'll be here waiting for you, so if you come here, you'll find me, I promise. Squall repeats those words. Renoa's like, Squall, if we ever get separated, like, how am I going to find you? You know, I'm a sorceress and all this, blah, blah, blah. Squall's like, if you come here, you'll find me, I promise. And it's at Edia's orphanage. There's this, like, big field. It's kind of pretty-ish, I guess. So what happens is Zell says, oh, sorry to interrupt, as, you know, Squall and Renoa are sort of having their moment. But Zell comes in and he says, so we just talked to someone. We just talked to a guy named Kiros, who is obviously one of Laguna's party members. And he's like, could it be that Kiros? They want to hire Seed to defeat the sorceress in the future. They think they have a plan, and it's like, maybe it's a trap to get Renoa back. But he's like, no, the guy I talked to, his name was Kiros. So they're like, okay, let's go. They go to the presidential palace in Esther, and sure enough, Squall and the party and all that, for the first time, they come face to face with none other than Laguna. And there's some dialogue between them. Laguna says, what do you want to talk about? You talk about some stuff, then you talk about the plan and all this. Laguna's plan is to get Sorceress Adele. So basically, you got to go and beat her, because Adele is going to be pissed when she wakes up, because, you know, Laguna sort of overthrew her and pushed her into that crypt and sort of like made her lose her power. So as soon as Adele wakes up, that's going to be the main threat. Neither Odine or Laguna are going to be safe in Esther. Adele's going to come and attack. What's happening is, so it's okay, so the plan is that when they beat Sorceress Adele and she's dead, Edie is no longer a sorceress because she's passed her power onto Renoa. Sorceress Ultimecia has no option but to possess Renoa. And Ellen will then send Renoa into the past with Ultimecia's consciousness and all that. And basically what will happen is time compression. You do get revealed by that with Edia when you're talking to her at the orphanage. She says, you sort of ask, you know, when she was possessed by Ultimecia, what's her goal? Edia does tell you that Ultimecia's goal is time compression. Past, present, and future all get mixed together, and it makes just one absolute messed up world where only she, Ultimecia, can exist. So yeah, quite an intense story. That's the thread of the world that's happening. So yeah, Laguna has decided to hire Seeds, and that's his plan. Use Ellen's power to send all of Ultimecia and your consciousness into the past altogether from Renoa's body after you beat Adele, and that will make a time compressed world where you can then... And the idea is that if you all remember each other, the bond that you have, like your whole party members and all that, you'll be able to exist in that time. You can then go and fight Sorceress Ultimecia, beat her, then come back to our timeline. Far-fetched, but it is Final Fantasy after all. You decide to agree to Laguna's plan, and that's what you were going to do. So when Adele's tomb fell out of outer space, it got sucked into like the Lunar Cry with all the monsters that came down, and Adele's tomb has been sort of like gravitationally absorbed. The lunatic Pandora has caught her. That's where Adele is. Cypher is also in there. So basically, you fly from Esther City with Laguna. You're in the Ragnarok, the big airship, and now you have to go and fly over to the lunatic Pandora. You break in. You see a little scene with Wedge and Biggs. They quit the Galbadian army. You battle with Fujin and Rajan. You beat them. You go in. You go through it. You battle the robot that kicked Edia and the party out earlier. After you beat that robot, you get into a battle with Cypher. And after you beat him, Disc 3 ends and you transition into Disc 4. Cypher gets up, he takes Renoa captive, and what's actually happening is Cypher is like siding with Sorceress Ultimecia because he's lost, he's confused, that's what Cypher's like, he's just a big puppet. So after you beat Cypher, he ends up getting up. He gets hold of Rinoa. He drags Rinoa up towards Sorceress Adele, and Adele kind of like magically absorbs Rinoa. You got to have this battle. You got to not attack Rinoa and only attack Adele. So you beat Sorceress Adele. Rinoa's like rescued again. So Adele has been defeated. She's dead. Ultimecia possesses Rinoa. Ellen sends Ultimecia and Rinoa's consciousness into the past. And then Ellen gets Rinoa back, like cuts off from like her power. Ultimecia's gone to the past. Rinoa's consciousness is brought back to the present. And this is where the time compression gets warped. The dimension, past, present and future all get mixed together. You get this really distorted world, and you end up in the future in Ultimecia's time. Your party is the only ones that exist, unless you count the little side quests with the Ragnarok and the card group, the triple triad game. But anyway, now you're in Ultimecia's world. You make your way over to a castle, which is where Edia's orphanage is, on the beach. You enter a castle, you beat some of the game's final bosses. You have your final showdown with Ultimecia. You beat her, and then the ending game scenes all play. As you're sort of like caught in a time warp, you have to find your way back to your own time. It's all scenes, you don't actually play, you just sit there and watch. So everybody ends up making it back except Squall. He ends up getting his stupid ass lost. He then has this like massive like mind flash where he like completely goes bonkers. His mind plays tricks on him and then he passes out. And the whole Squall is dead theory comes from that. That's also really, really cool. There's a series of it on YouTube. But so anyway, Rinoa ends up, you see her, she goes out looking for him, and she ends up sort of like going back through the time warps. She finds Squall. Squall's kind of like laying there, he's completely out. Rinoa thinks he's dead, she starts crying. And then the heavens open up, all of the time distortion disappears. They're all back in their own time, and Rinoa looks down and she smiles, so does that mean Squall is alive? Ending credits roll, and you see this sort of like party happening on Balam Garden. They're all having this big party because they've beaten Sorceress. I didn't get a pretty stone, I must have 99. I do. I have 99 of everything. The other potions are there in Sora's stock, I can't get any more. So let me do a quick save. And yeah, Final Fantasy VIII ends with that movie playing. The garden, they're having a party. Zell eats a hot dog for the first time. It's a long running gag, joke gag, that he can never get one of the hot dogs because they're always sold out. And you see Edia and Cid at the garden party. Everyone's good. Laguna is reunited with Ellen again. They go and see Rain's grave. It's not revealed by text, but you work it out in the game. Squall's parents were Rain and Laguna. Rain's already dead. Another thing is that Julia, the piano singer that Laguna had a crush on, she met up with General Caraway. You do see this as text in the game, but General Caraway, Julia was waiting for Laguna to return, but he never did. She was waiting for a soldier to come home from war, but he never did. General Caraway, who is Rinoa's father, comforts Julia when she's down. That's how they get to know each other. They get hitched. They have a daughter. That daughter is Rinoa. So Squall and Rinoa are sort of linked by these people. It's pretty cool how they wrote this story. Amazing story, really, when you think about it. But you've beaten the Sorceress. You see Laguna and Ellen sort of like by Rain's grave. And then as the game sort of ends, all the credits, you see the school, and then you see Rinoa and Squall out on the porch, just sort of enjoying each other's company. And yeah, that's the entire story of Final Fantasy VIII. That is how the game plays out. That's, yeah, I can recite pretty much the whole game off the top of my head. Alright, I'm going to save here, and then we got to go find some items to progress in this game, so I'm going to take a quick break. I need a drink after all that talking.